Welcome to the very first episode of Keeping Tabs, where we get real about real estate. That's right, this is real talk, real help, and real insights to guide you on your journey to confident home ownership. I'm your co-host, Zach Viscomi, but the real star of the show is renowned real estate expert Tabitha Heit. She's helped buyers, sellers, investors, and relocation clients navigate the market with strategy, heart, and results. And now she's bringing that same wealth of knowledge and experience to the mic. Tabitha, so great to have you on here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is your show. This is something that I know you've been thinking about for a while. So kind of talk with me a little bit about where this came from, right? What were you thinking here?
Well, I think for a few reasons, I want people to be able to get to know me and what I can offer, but also just in general to share knowledge. The real estate market is very hard to navigate at times for people. And I feel like a platform like this will give buyers, sellers some tips, some tricks, and just knowledge. Because I feel like going into this market, whether you're looking to sell, whether you're looking to buy, it's a big investment that we're dealing with. And you should have as much information as possible so that you can make the right decisions when it comes to selling or buying a property.
I love that. And I know that I've spent a lot of time talking with you about this and that you really do have a passion and a heart for the people that you work with. And, it's more than just buying a house or investing in real estate. It's really a home and it's a process and it's something that you really give your heart to. So I also know that you're pretty humble. And so you're not going to toot your own horn here. And so I want the audience to know a little bit more about who exactly you are and what you've been able to accomplish. So you're the founder and leader of the Heit Homes Group at Berkshire Hathaway, Fox and Roach. You've earned a reputation as one of the most respected and results-driven agents. So you're obviously licensed here in Pennsylvania, but you've worked with relocation clients, first-time home buyers, seasoned sellers, really navigate the complexities of Montgomery County, Bucks County, Delaware, Philadelphia, and sort of these surrounding areas, right? But that's just sort of the tip of the iceberg here. I mean, you're a certified seller representative specialist. You're a top negotiator. You've been named one of the top 250 Latino agents in the U.S. You've been recognized by Philadelphia Style, Philadelphia Magazine, Suburban Life. I mean, you're showing up in all these places. And I know that all of that recognition just comes from an outpouring of your heart and wanting to really make an impact in the lives of every person that you work with. Right. And so obviously you've achieved a lot, but kind of talk to me a little bit more about the passion behind this, right? Like what got you into real estate and what really got you excited about it?
I grew up with a single mom who always worked in the real estate platform. And I saw what real estate could do for families. And for me, that it was a huge impact on my personal life. So, single mom, raising two daughters. She owned a home. She was fortunate to be able to work really hard to own a home. With the equity she had in these homes, she was able to put us through school. So that was huge for us. It was an opportunity that, had she not owned a house, it would have been really hard for us to go to college. So, seeing that and watching her pride in her house and making sure that she always had a roof over her two daughters' heads, which was not always easy. And it was huge for our life. So knowing what I wanted to, I always wanted to get into real estate. I waited till I was a little bit more mature and had more experience of life because there's a lot that comes into it. And people that want to trust you to lead their way in a big decision for them want to know that, one, you're vested in it, you're 100% in, and you're going to guide them. They want to feel comfortable that you're going to guide them in the right steps. So, it took a little bit more maturity in my life to get to the point where I wanted to do it and was able to take the risk, because there's a lot of risk when you get into this career. It's not a steady paycheck. You don't know month to month what's going to happen. So it took some time to do that, but the joy of finding somebody a home or selling their home and changing people's lives, because with home ownership, I feel like it's a life-changing experience for people. And I really enjoy meeting the different people. That's the most exciting part in hearing their stories and seeing how I can be part of it.
Yeah, and so you talk about needing to mature before you jumped into real estate, and what I know is that you're actually a successful business owner. And so you started a business, you were running and operating that business, and so it wasn't just that you were just sort of waiting to jump into your career. I mean, you're a person who takes action, you get results, and so that maturity was understanding what it took to serve people and to serve them well in the form of business, right?
Yeah, I mean, and business entrepreneurship with real estate. When you're a real estate agent, you're your own boss, and so you have to be able to manage your time, manage client expectations, and be a self starter. So it takes all of that. So in my business ownership years, very similar skills are needed to be a real estate agent. So it was the right path for me.
And now you talked about obviously your mom being in the real estate industry. And so that was really your first exposure to it. But it sounded like what really impacted you was the fact that without your mom owning a home and having this equity, that it would have been really hard for you and your siblings to go to college and for you to get the opportunities that you have too. And so when did you know that this would be your path? Like, was there a moment in time where you were just like, I want to help other people achieve this type of life too?
I started thinking about it probably 10 years ago. But again, I wanted it to be the right time. So I think that, I'm on my third house personal right now. I've gone through the process on those houses. I've used other real estate agents. We don't usually represent ourselves. So I've gone through and I've seen it all. I've been a buyer, I've been a seller, I've experienced that. I think that's also helpful when you're talking to clients that you don't have to be a homeowner, but it's nice to be able to share similar experiences, not from a real estate professional, but just someone that has really gone through the process and understands it. So that takes time in life to get those experiences, and I did it at the right time.
And so in this journey now of having of being in real estate and serving clients and really helping them, I know that you have a heart for your community, for placing people in a really interesting and unique way, right? Because in conversations that we've had, you talked about how buying a home is more than just buying the structure, right? You're buying the location, you're buying into the area and the community and all that kind of stuff. And so talk with me a little bit about how that deeply personal approach to helping people really is a part of who you are and what you're passionate about.
The approach for a buyer is very important because every buyer is going to have a different scenario. Some buyers are ready today or they think they're ready today, but we might have a long conversation and they may or may not be ready, and I would give my recommendation. I think what people respect about me is my transparency, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat something. I'm not trying to just get a sale under my belt. That's not the end game. Is that I become your forever agent, and that may or may not take a lot of time, right? It could be the first house, you're ready to go, and you get lucky and you buy a house quickly, and it could be years. So for me, it's setting up consultations. It's meeting with that client first to see where they are right now. Where are they at financially? Where do they want to be? Are they looking for a different location? Are they coming in from a different state? Where would they find happiness in location, and trying to talk about that? Matching them up with a lender depending on, you know, um, their needs. So every buyer that comes to me has a different and unique story, and that's the things I love. And it might be years before we get them a home. It just depends on their timeline and what works for them.
And I know that, a first time home buyer 8 years ago, right? But it's my first home and we're still living in it with our family. And I didn't even know. I didn't even know what questions to ask. And it's like this is one of the biggest investments of really anybody's life, depending on, however big your home is. Usually it's one of the biggest investments that you'll ever make. And yet it's one that we have very little information or knowledge of oftentimes when we're going into it first, second, or even third time. So I know a part of this podcast is being able to provide that information to the audience. Can you share with our listeners, because you shared this story before and I thought it was such a great example. You were talking about a gentleman who was 72 years old and finally purchasing his first home. We were just talking about buyers. In a little bit we're going to switch to talking to sellers, but kind of walk me through that and how that was just a great example of one thing that you do to really help people.
Yeah. I had this client who's 72. He just took advantage of his VA benefit after all the years. He was in the military, a Marine, and he served our country. And he had this VA benefit that he could use. He's been renting for all these years, paying close to $3,000 a month in rent, which is kind of crazy. He finally purchased his home with his soon to be bride. For him, he wasn't ready. He didn't want to make the plunge of purchasing a property 20, 30, 40 years ago, but now was the right time for him to do it. And it's amazing, right? Because first of all, his mortgage is way less than his rental payment. And so that's kind of eye opening in his scenario. But he finally has a place to settle down and call home, and that's pretty incredible. And for someone like him, I think if he had met somebody in the real estate industry earlier that maybe had conversations with him, maybe he would have made the plunge earlier. I don't know. That's the importance of talking to agents and just getting knowledge, right? And then deciding what you want to do with it. Because the VA benefit is great. You could technically put no money down as a vet. And as a disabled vet, there's all these other perks too, which he happens to be. So there's lots out there, and it's knowing what's out there that can assist each person.
Yeah, and it's again, it's just so hard to know even what questions to ask. I'm sure he was just like he had his own ideas of what was possible and what wasn't possible and what he needed or thought he could do. And so, yeah, that's great. That's what we're going to talk about in this show and continue to talk about.
And I think for Pennsylvania specifically and some other states that are similar, us as real estate agents, we are not an attorney review state, right? So the importance of a real estate agent in this state to really fully explain the legalities of what you're signing up for is important. So matching up with a real estate professional, whoever it may be, because you don't have an attorney in the state to do it unless you really want to, but most people don't. So being able to have the confidence in your real estate professional that's going to really walk you through the legalities, because there's a lot of legalities when purchasing a home and things you should look out for. So it's important to have a good relationship with that person that's going to help lead you through.
Well, let's talk more about this then. I think that's a good opportunity for us to switch gears a little bit. I mean, this is real talk about real estate. So let's talk about real estate. And I know just even from what I've been hearing and what I've been seeing, which is very little, it seems like the real estate market is in sort of this like limbo phase. Who are we? What do we want to be? Where do we want to go? And I know a lot of people, especially with the way that the home prices have been trending, and now that, sort of the interest rates have evened out a little bit, we're looking at people thinking, oh, maybe now is a good time to sell my home. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I actually have no idea. So let's walk through this process as if we were going to be selling our home. And first, you have to make that decision, right? Like you have to decide, is now a good time? So how do I, as the seller, even know that? How do I even start to make that determination?
People sell their home for a number of reasons. They say death, divorce is one of them, unfortunately, but either, needing to expand or downsize, right? So, a lot of people might be in an area in a suburb of Philadelphia paying very hefty taxes in a large home, taking care of a large yard that they may or may not use, take advantage of, rooms that they're not even going into, and heating and cooling. So sometimes those people are the downsizers, right? Like, do I need all this space? So asking yourself as a seller, do I want and do I need all of this space? And then if you don't, if you're ready for a new chapter in life, and some people just want to move, like I loved moving a lot and not staying still. So, if they're going to do that, where are they going now? So those are like, okay, I want to move, but now where am I going to go? And with the way the market is, and the reason that the part of the reason that the inventory has been so low is because a lot of these sellers don't know where they're going to go. And it's like, okay, I might sell my house for a great amount, but what am I going to buy now for that amount? And not seeing enough out there to make them want to do it. So there's been some gridlock in the market, which is why the inventory is not a ton, because people are staying in their houses longer because they don't necessarily know where they want to go. So that's the first thing you got to ask yourself as a seller. Now, if you're just looking to relocate for work reasons, or you're looking like you don't have enough room in your house, you're expanding your family and you need bigger, or you want to be in a certain school district or whatever, then those buyers are looking because there's a goal, whether it's need more space, need a school system. And so with that, I might be selling my first home and looking to level up to more space. What financially does that mean? So it's like I have to talk to real estate agents, interview a few. It's not a bad idea to interview three, I would say, to see who you match with, and then go through the plan. Like, I have this property I want to sell. I want to move here. How do we make that happen? And for some people, it's more challenging than others. I bought the three houses, and I had to be contingent on two of them selling my house. Like, I had to sell to get
Uh,
on. And that was really tricky. It's a balancing act. So you have to feel confident that your agent can balance that with you, because it's not the easiest thing to do in this market specifically. I mean, it's been really hard to get contingent offers. So some people, then it's about talking about, do I need to be contingent on selling my house? Do I have the funds to do it without being contingent? And all the different strategies that are needed, which you need a professional to kind of walk you through what those strategies are. And then if you look at all the numbers and you look at the finances and you say, yeah, I think it's time for us to put this plan in action, then it's getting your house ready for sale, and what that's going to involve. And some houses are easier than others to get prepared.
Yeah, and so just for listeners too, I mean, the being contingent, as you were talking about here, means that you've got to sell the home that you have before you can purchase the one that you get into, right?
Right.
And so if there's not a lot of opportunity for you to purchase a home, there could be like a whole bunch of offers on the house that you're selling and then nowhere for you to go afterwards. And so you can't take the offers because then you don't have anywhere to go. So it's like that's really tricky. I can't imagine. Yeah, that makes a lot of
And
sense.
the rental market's really tight too. So it's, who knows if you can rent at this point. Like, maybe you sell your house, but then maybe you would consider a short-term rental. Those are harder, and those are usually, if you go short-term rental where they're furnished, those are very expensive. And then how long will you be in those? Are you okay being in those a certain amount of time? So it's a balancing act. Now, if you don't have to be contingent, you're fortunate, and it's a little bit easier for you. But we discuss that and see what plan makes sense.
As difficult as we're saying it sounds, it's not impossible, right? But that's part of the importance of working with somebody who knows that market, knows how to navigate it in a way that balances those two things. And so you mentioned earlier and sort of briefly about, as the consumer, we should really be interviewing at least a handful of agents, which I thought was a really interesting idea because so many of us, myself included, is just like everybody's a real estate agent. Like everyone knows somebody who is a real estate agent. And so you end up working with somebody just because, they're a cousin or an uncle or a friend of the family, and you have no idea their skill set. How do you even know who the right person would be?
I think, for buying and selling, it might be a little bit different, but some people are doing both, right? Some people are going to sell their property and then buy another property. So you end up spending a lot of time with this person. Even if you get the first house that you're going to put an offer in, it's still a lot of time. When you're selling a house, that agent is in your house all the time. Can I trust that agent in my house? Do I need to be here? with that agent in my house. They're dropping off documents or they're straightening up. I mean, when we're selling agents, we're going through the house and we're, pulling up blinds and organizing and dusting something that we see that was left really dusty, so we're going through, but we're doing that, hopefully with good intentions of making sure that their house showcases as best as possible. So it's being comfortable with that person in our house, right? Because they're in and out, time, flexibility, schedules. You might be going to be looking to purchase a house and you're working as the client 9 to 5, and you're really going to be looking to look at homes at 5. The agent, you need to make sure that the agent's flexibility and time schedule matches up with that, because when you're purchasing a house, at least in this market, and we don't see it changing anytime soon, you have to go to the house immediately. Like if a house hits the market, like you can't wait until the next weekend's open house or when your agent comes back. You have to be able to match up a time slot. So finding an agent that has a schedule that's going to work with your schedule is important. Knowledge is also important, just what they're saying. A lot of times for sellers, they want to hear what their house is worth and they want to hear a very high number,
Sure.
right? And we would all love to sell our house for a very high number, but you have to look at all the data, and hopefully each agent is going through that with you. And when you interview multiple agents, you're going to see what those numbers look like. They should be pretty similar. And if you have an agent that has a really high number outside of the other agents that are similar, that's probably, a telling point. So you want to look at all that information to see, okay, this agent's promising me a lot more than the other agents are promising me they can sell the house for, or hoping. We don't promise, but we're giving you a opinion of value, and our opinion should kind of match, because we're looking at comps to get those amounts. So interviewing agents, that helps you determine your price point too, because you'll be able to look at different opinions of price. So which is very, very important. So personality is going to be important. These people are meeting your kids, they're meeting your family, they're in your life, and sometimes they're in your life a lot longer than you think, because again, it might take a while to find that right house.
Well, that's all great information and true. Like, and it was eye opening for me. It's like I really should be. I interview or research every other person that I would work with, who's going to manage my finances, who's going to, do this thing or that thing, my doctor, whoever it is. And but it didn't with real estate, which, and I think a lot of people are that way too. So now that we're sort of deciding, like, yeah, now's the time I need to or want to sell my home. How do we even prepare? What are some tips and tricks and hacks and things that we could do to better our chances of getting that high price, of being able to, hit the market with some power and some impact?
Curb appeal is great, so making sure your yard looks great coming in. Weed, make sure that it's presentable, and maybe go a little step above. Fresh mulch always helps. So the impact is right when that person drives up to your driveway. So making that an experience. And then, obviously, getting your house prepared as far as minimizing as much clutter as possible. Touch up painting. Paint always goes a long way, making sure it looks fresh. And then there's certain things you want to do based on the house that you're selling. So I always suggest, if someone has a stucco house, there's a reputation for stucco, that stucco could be a problem. It may or may not be a problem, but there's a reputation out there. I have some clients that refuse to look at any house with stucco, and then others that might consider it. So for certain things in the house that might be a flag for some consumers, I always say sellers, get ahead of it. So if you have a stucco house and you know that there's going to be a clientele, I'm telling you, there's a clientele out there that are fearful of stucco. Maybe we get a home inspection, a stucco inspection prior to listing, so we see where we're at. So there's no big surprises. And then you're able to share, hey, I just did a stucco inspection and it's clean. And if it's not clean, there's a good chance that you're going to find out under contract. And then, you potentially lose the deal, because they terminate and it gets sticky. And once your house is often on the market, there's a perception about that. So in my opinion, things like stucco, you want to get ahead of it and see where it's at before you list. Pools are a big, thing. So what's the pool condition in it? Some people love pools, some people don't, some people are in the middle. So getting ahead of, is there any big problems with the pool before you put it on the market? And then, servicing your people want to see that in most cases that your house has been cared for. So servicing things like your heating systems, and making sure that those had their yearly service before you list. Dust them all off. There's a lot of houses they're all cobwebby. So get it serviced, get a sticker saying, "Hey, this is operational," and it brings comfort to a potential buyer walking in to your house. So getting it, minimizing as much as possible, and having an experience of a buyer walking in your house, making it feel like home to them is very helpful. Now in this market, a lot of things are selling that maybe you don't need to do as much because of the low inventory, but you never know when
Right.
that's going to shift a little bit, and it's starting to shift in some markets.
So when we're preparing our homes, and obviously, this again, when it comes to investments and it comes to stuff like this, we're always hesitant to spend money. What's the impact that you've seen and in your experience between, I'm doing a little bit of touch up paint versus having the whole room repainted, right? I mean, does that kind of stuff actually impact either the price or the speed in which the home is sold? What has been your experience and how investing in it now pays later?
That's going to change depending on the market, and that's the importance of us agents providing a CMA, it's comparative market analysis, which shows comps and shows condition of home. So on mine, my clients will get a digital, most people, they'll get a digital version and a print. And on the digital version, they can click through and see pictures of houses that have sold, right? So they could say, okay, this house is in my neighborhood. And look at, they didn't paint, they didn't, maybe their house was a mess. Maybe they didn't even have pictures, who knows, but they can get an idea like, okay, but that sold and that sold quickly. That sold in 3 days. So maybe it's not as important to start painting because we're still in a seller's market in most of the suburbs. And it may or may not be as important. But if the market's starting to shift and days on market are staying longer, that's when it's important, right? Because now your house has been on the market for 2 weeks, and say you've had 20 buyers in, then we priced it too high, usually is the issue. But two, maybe we should have done those things. Maybe, if your house, you walk in, you might live with 5 cats and not know that it smells like 5 cats. But I would walk in and I would say your house smells like 5 cats. Now, for some sellers, that could be offensive and they might be annoyed that I just told them that their house smelled like 5 cats. But you want an agent to be honest with you, because that smell of 5 cats, there will be buyers that come in and smell it. So having an agent walk through those things to be honest in the best light we can, is important. The transparency is super important when you're selling your home. So making your house picture perfect in this market in the suburbs may or may not be needed because of where we're at today. But again, that could change. But you still want it, in my opinion, to get the best value, to get the most amount, do the little things that cost the least of, amount of money and effort, to make it shine. Now, things like new roofs, like if you have a 30-year-old roof and your market might be a buyer who's their first time home buying, who might be using an FHA loan, who might be using a VA loan. I might say to you, you might want to make the investment for a new roof to sell this with, because if we're getting an FHA buyer for this house, potentially, this might not pass.
Huh.
So I might make suggestions depending on the market to do some big fixes if I feel like we're gonna have a hiccup finding that buyer that it's going to work for.
And I've heard this before that like the longer your home is listed, like on the market, the worse it is for you, just from optics perspective. And I know that even as a consumer, that when I'm looking and I'm like, all the other homes have been up for a week or so at the most, and then this one's like on day 45, like, what's the problem? Is that generally the case too? Why does that, I'm sure there's a ton of different answers, but like what is that? Like why does that happen and how can we avoid that?
Yeah, I mean, and listen, there's been years where that would have been okay, like a
That
house
would have been the
45 days
normal.
on the market would have been like, "Oh, that's no problem." But now with internet, with all of the resources that the consumer, the buyers have at their fingertips, it tells days on market, this amount. It shows you the price history, drop, 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 or taken off the market, back on the market. So you guys have now as buyers all these skills that or tools that you can look at all this. So because our market has been so competitive for years now, consistently and going up consistently, and knowing it's so hard to get a house in certain markets, the long days on market is a big red flag for clients, and it might not be anything. The reality is maybe maybe the pitcher stunk, maybe maybe I don't know, it just
Could be anything.
wasn't the right time. But usually it's price.
Mm,
So usually it's, hey, we went to the seller and we said, here's your range, here to here. And the seller said, oh, well, I want top of the range. I want a pricey here. And the agent might have said, I think you should price it lower. I think you should go in lower and hope to drive up. And the seller said, no, I want to price it the way I want to price it, which they have that's their right to do. And then they missed the mark because they priced it too high. Pricing strategy is huge. And if you price at that very top of that range, your house really better be 100% good and ready to go and spectacular because, buyers see that.
mm,
And if it's priced too high, then you just miss the mark. And then you can keep doing reduction, reduction, reduction. But that's not a great look
mm.
for the buyer.
That's an interesting point here. Like, and I see that as when like in marketing, for example, or in sales or in running your business, it's like you have one shot at a first impression. Like you really, in anything really in life, you've got one chance at a first impression, and if you blow that, it's nearly impossible to overcome. Even if you do, rebuilding that takes time and effort and everything else. And so it's like the same thing's true for your home. And it's like if you list it, or if you don't do it correctly, or if whatever oversight or overstep you have at the very beginning could damage your chances for who knows how long, is basically what that sounds like. And it makes sense that that would be the case, which kind of leads me into the next point here on why it's so important to work with an agent, because we have so many of these tools at our fingertips, and because many people are trying to save a buck or whatever it may be. I'll just list it myself. I'll Redfin it or throw it on Zillow, and we all get Zillow drunk as we're looking, just kind of
Yeah.
scrolling through all this stuff, right? And so like, not only do we not know enough in most cases, that could be extremely damaging. So kind of walk me through this idea here of how important it really is to work with an agent and why that's an investment that is going to save you. And
First of all, these websites, that I won't call anyone out, but these websites that you guys have tools to, the numbers are not always accurate. And so when they're saying, hey, your home's worth this, even the software that I have on my website, you can go on my website and check my home valuation, by plugging in your address. It's going to come up with a number that's based on potentially what public records has in there. And that number's not always right. So even on my website, there's a disclaimer like, if you really want a market analysis, I have to go through and I have to handpick and I have to see your house and kind of see where it lines up with the other homes in the area. So a lot of times I did an example. I had a client who questioned me on the price that we were listing their house. And she was sitting at her house and said, I think we listed too low. And she had a Zestimate, right? And I pulled up the same exact time at my house, her house. And I just curiosity, I wanted to see what it was telling me. And it was a $30,000 difference at the same time of day
Huh.
from my house to where she was pulling up that information. So those numbers change. I have no idea why that is the case, and that should be investigated for sure. But if you're just going off of, hey, I just got an email that said my house is worth this amount, it may or not, may not be the case. And your house is worth whatever a willing and able body of buyer who's going to pay for it. That's what your house is worth. So how do we get top dollar or top value for your house? That's when going through your house and doing certain things around it to get it prepared is important. But selling your house with a reputable person who knows the market, who knows the community, who knows the buyers, who works with buyers and sellers is helpful too. Because, an agent that works with both can understand who might be walking into their house and what their opinions might be. So having a professional to help guide you, I think is important. Obviously, it's my career and I want agents to be used to sell homes, but I think there's a lot of value to that.
Well, and I imagine that there's, because you're in it all the time and you're an expert, right? And you understand some of the nuances and the changes that are coming, that you can provide some insights that, the regular person wouldn't otherwise have. How do you navigate different offers? How do you know which one to choose? Do you just take the highest price one, or is there other ways that maybe some of these offers are better? How would
And
you
that's
even
that's
answer those
another thing
questions?
of helping navigate, and also, managing the people that are going to be coming in and out of your house, right? There's a lot of times we see a for sale by owner, and sometimes we work, if I might have a buyer who saw the for sale by owner, so I contact the owner, they may or may not pick up their phone. So like there's a lot of missed opportunity in that, because you're not having agents promote your house when you do that. So there's a lot of missed opportunity, but it's navigating the offers, which is another huge thing, because sometimes we pick wrong as agents, and it's knowing what offer and explaining to the client, the sellers, what offer looks strong. Your opinion, obviously, at the end of the day, your seller's the one that picks these offers, picks through them, but we help navigate and make them understand the differences of the offers. For me, it's important when there's a multiple offer situation I call all the lenders personally to make sure that their lending is in fact what it is. There's a lot, I could probably go get a pre-approval right now online and show this paper, and that online they didn't look at my bank accounts. They were just really doing a credit check.
Right.
And so a lot of those letters I can say that is not a full pre-approval. That they just did a credit check. We have no idea what their job is. We have no idea, and we have to weed through that. So you might have a great pre-approval that means nothing. So helping navigate that, inspections, helping navigate if there's an offer that's higher, but potentially waiving some inspections, or an offer that's lower but waiving inspections, that might balance out to something that's just a little bit higher. So we talk through all that with the clients so that they can make the best informed decision.
So I know in kind of your bio a little bit earlier, I mentioned that you're a top negotiator, you're a certified seller representative specialist. This idea of negotiation is one that's really interesting to me, because um, when I was first exposed to it years ago, I didn't know that real estate agents need to be good negotiators. What are you negotiating? What is it that you're doing as an agent, and where that negotiation comes into play, and how that actually helps the clients that you're working with?
For me, when I have a listing, there's nothing better than an agent picking up the phone and calling you over the phone. And it's not just a text. I texted you an offer and letting it roll. Like for me, if it's a client that I really want to get the house, if it's a buyer that I'm hoping for, and you call up the agent and you have a phone call conversation. And here's the problem: is some agents don't pick up their phone, some listing agents don't. So it's hard, but at least you tried with a phone call. And then if they don't pick up, then it's a text. Hey, I have a couple questions and offers coming, and then just providing the initial the initial impact is just providing, hey, this is who I am. Uh, and as an agent, and I'm looking for a smooth, seamless transaction. I'm going to try to make this go as smooth as possible for you. This is my client. This is what they're potentially going to be offering. Get an idea on what the sellers even want. Because sometimes, it's like, when do they want to close? What's important to them in this offer? What are they looking for, to try to see if your buyers can match it? But if you just throw in an offer, I've gotten offers in the middle of the night with no call or anything, and it's like this offer comes in and it's like, well, who are you? Like, so, and there's never any communication. So that doesn't speak loudly to me, and I usually will say to my clients, if they're selling their home, I don't know who this agent is. Like, I don't, they just threw an offer together and we didn't really have a conversation. So sometimes that's okay, but I think the personal touch really helps the sellers and the buyers, making sure that they're your voice and they're here to answer any questions that they have for the clients.
Yeah, I mean, I summarize all of this. I think the reality is we don't know what we don't know. And we shouldn't have to. We're so willing to trust financial advisors with our investments, right? We're just kind of like, here's my money and you go put it into whatever funds you think are best, and hopefully it's going to get back the percentage that it's going to be right? And it's like, we trust them with our retirement, with our future, with our legacy, with whatever it is. And yet, when it comes to real estate, for whatever reason, and I think because it's so personal, we as consumers try to hold on to control in a lot of ways that ends up being damaging. And so I think there really is value here in just finding an agent and somebody, a person like you, that you can trust and really just rely that they're going to have your best interest at heart, that they're going to go to bat for you, that you get exactly what you need and what you want, right?
For me, this is not a transaction. I'm not looking to just, sell something and mark you off. It's really about, you're changing someone's life here, right? And you're providing them a home potentially, or you're selling the home that they've loved forever, and it's a big emotional attachment. There's a lot of emotions that come through all of this. And sometimes, again, it's going through death, divorce. There's a lot of emotions that get brought up, good and bad and ugly. So for us, it's helping navigate and being honest. And I think real estate professionals, we don't have the best reputation. And in general, there are some bad, like in any industry, some bad eggs that ruin it and ruin what we do and what we give for the clients. But if we just stay honest, and I think I wrote an offer 2 days ago, and the client asked my opinion on price, and she was actually higher with what she wanted to offer than I thought she should. So I gave her my suggestion, and my suggestion came on based on comps. We looked at the comps, we looked at what she needed to do to the property, we looked at it all, and we made an offer. And she trusted me with the number that we put down. Now, the offer has not been accepted. The house has been sitting on the market for a while. It's been sitting, and obviously the seller's firm on their price. But could I have said, "Oh, just pay, yeah, let's just pay it." And my client would have trusted me with that, would have said, "Sure, let's give them what they want." And she would have looked at me because of the time that she has spent with me and trusted that number. But I, in my heart, don't feel it's worth that number. So I don't want to make that recommendation. We could be under contract right now. We really could be. But for me, the relationship I have with her is very important. And I want that to stay a good relationship. And for me, it's honesty. I don't think the house is worth that. So, and she respected that, we don't have her house right now. She wants it, but she doesn't want it enough to, like, make a
Overpay.
mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. And see, that's, to me, that's what it's all about, right? It's like, it's really caring about the person that you're working with to make those recommendations, because we all know, like, you make a living off of helping people buy and sell their homes. That's how you make your living, right?
Right.
But you want to do that in a way that is in a high level of integrity, right? And that's why you become people's forever agent.
Right. To kind of think past that, because at the end of the day, you're going to leave that transaction. You'll touch base with your client every so often or whenever you can. And they're going to be in that house with that payment, potentially with things falling apart, and you're gone now. And they're going to forget how great you were if they really made a bad decision, and uh, you don't ever want to be told by a client, I made the worst decision of my life buying this house.
Uh,
And that can happen. And people make really bad decisions because it's dangling a pretty house over them, and they're not thinking about the big picture of what that's going to cost them every day. Things will break, even if they're not broken now. If you're looking at a 20-year-old heater, it will break. So will you be prepared when it breaks? And having someone really walk you through those things. Those are the conversations that we walk through when we're walking through houses. This is 20 years old. Are you okay with it if it breaks tomorrow? If you're willing to waive all your inspections, are you okay with this breaking tomorrow? Do you have the money to make that okay? If having the money does not make it okay for you, then it's probably not the house for you, because the last thing you want to do is start your homeownership in the negative.
well, look, we're running out of time. I feel
Yes,
like we could talk about this forever,
we
but
could.
and we will. We're gonna have plenty more conversations about this, but I think in summary, it is a seller's market right now.
It
There's
is.
an opportunity for you to be able to list your home, but pricing strategy matters, presentation matters. There's so many things here that matter, and why it's important to work with an agent that you trust. At least start there and start interviewing people. So, in closing, what I want to tell everybody is, if you are thinking about selling, and putting your house out there, your home out there right now, or even just wondering what your home might be worth right now, Tabitha is the person to call. Right. She's going to take care of you. You can hop on her website. We'll have it pop up here, but it's just tabithaheit.com. This is just the first episode. We're going to be keeping
It's
tabs
the
on
beginning.
everything.
We're gonna be keeping tabs on it all. Anything real estate we're gonna talk about, and we're gonna have some great guests. And yeah, I'm excited for this.
Me too. If you found any of this helpful, please subscribe, share it with a friend. Don't forget, you can always reach out. And again, this isn't just real estate, it's your life, it's your home, it's your future.